to another episode of the Return of the Roar Sacramento Kings podcast on Sactown Sports 1140. My name is Brenden Nunes. Frankie Cartoscelli here, as usual. What's going on, Frank? How you doing, man?
It's a special day. It's a special day for the pod. The father of the pod making his grand reintroduction. We're making an introduction, I guess I should say, to the Godfather of the Return of the Roar podcast. It's
The
a pleasure.
Podfather has a ring to it.
The Podfather. I'm pleased to welcome our good friend Christopher Watkins back to the pod. Chris, welcome.
Francis, Brandon, thank you. It's good to be back. The Roar has officially returned. I think we can officially say that this feels like a breakthrough episode for us, and I'm just ready to kind of hop back on the saddle and get back to what I know, and that's podding with you fellas. So let's get this thing going, man. Like, yeah, I'm ready and I'm excited to hop on the pod and join y'all on a routine basis. So excited to kind of get back in the swing of things.
Absolutely. Shout out to anybody that understands that breakthrough episode reference. That was from years ago between the three of us.
Yeah.
But recently, shout out Vegas. That was a good time in Summer League.
Yeah.
The Sacramento Kings have been playing a handful of games without Malik Monk, who has suffered an ankle injury a little while ago, is set to return somewhat soon, the day-to-day. Domantas Sabonis has had back tightness, and now that has been downgraded to soreness. I guess you would call that downgraded. Also, day-to-day. And and DeMar DeRozan as well. Same situation as Domantas Sabonis, back soreness, eventually tightness. Also day-to-day. Seems like all of these guys could potentially be in action, or at least it's in play for Friday's action against the Los Angeles Clippers. But in that time, they've played 3 games without all 3 of these guys. Actually, did Domas play in the game against Minnesota? He did.
He left and then came. He left in the
right.
fourth quarter. Came back after. I think you mentioned it was Keegan that bumped into him and he started holding his back. I think.
Yeah.
Came back in, finished the game,
something like that. In the meantime, that's kind of left one, I guess you'd say, star out there for the Kings, and that's De'Aaron Fox. And he's really taken his game to another level. I think that's kind of where we have to start here.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, just a little bit, 60 points is kind of something that should be talked about a little bit, setting the franchise record for points in a single game. By the way, doing it on 35 shots, 22 of 35, 6 of 10 from 3, 10 of 11 from the free throw line. And that's the first night of a back-to-back. Comes out the next game, 49 points on 16 of 30 from the field. A large majority of all these shots in the 2 games also were unassisted. He's kind of just going out there and creating shots, getting buckets on his own. And I think there's been more of an emphasis on getting to the rim, seemingly paint touches. And that seems to be the big change here if you're looking at something stylistically. But just a ridiculous run from De'Aaron. And then obviously the loss that they just had to the Hawks. He puts up 28-7 in that game. A little bit slower, but that's also relatively to the scorching hot streak that we kind of just talked about in that back-to-back. But I guess we'll start with you, Chris. I mean, just kind of watching De'Aaron have these sort of moments that he hasn't had in his career, surpassing his previous career high on back-to-back nights. Just what do you make of how he's taken this next step and what it could mean for the team?
I really don't think you can understate how big these games were. Obviously, I mean, you set the franchise record for points. It kind of speaks for itself. And then shout out Frankie, by the way. Everybody piggybacked off his stat. I will admit that I chuckled the first time I saw Frankie's tweet of the most points in a 24 or a 2-game span. And we know that De'Aaron also snapped that. It was DeMarcus with 104 previously in 2016. That definitely wasn't on my radar heading into night 2, but I think that just in terms of De'Aaron Fox's legacy, that's really the thing that I've been thinking about the most these past couple days is just, he, not that he needed it, But in a way, he kind of did. Like this season. I've been kind of on this number of De'Aaron is, I don't know how many games away, but to start the season, he was 72 games away from being the all-time leader in Sacramento Kings franchise history in terms of games played, passing Jason Thompson. And, Whitey and Drapes did the list this summer of the top 40 Kings, and that definitely brought to the forefront of the conversation, like, where does De'Aaron stand all-time Kings? And obviously that leads to the conversation of, well, if he leads them to the conference finals, that's going to definitely help his case for being the best King of all time, things like that. And, a weekend like he just had definitely helps him enter that. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember where he ended up finishing on that Whitey and Drapes list, but
I think he was fifth.
It was either, oh, really? He was 5.
Yeah,
I would have
he was
thought
top. I think I remember because he number 5 and he was 5th, and I made those graphics, which were, not fantastic, but the 5 for Fox, and yeah, so already a top 5 player in a lot of Kings fans' minds.
Yeah, and I mean, so that really puts it there. I mean, that's the benchmark that he's working with, and I feel like the thing that he was really missing was these kind of performances. Like DeMarcus had that over him. That no, DeMarcus never made the playoffs, but he still had those 55, 56 point performances and really led to some incredible memories for sure. But De'Aaron as an individual, I don't want to say he didn't have it, because he has all those game-winning moments. He has just the entire Beam Team season, all of that. But there wasn't just this singular thing that you could point to as an individual where it was like, no, De'Aaron Fox is that guy. And I think just the stage was set. Like, how many times last year would it have been nice to have De'Aaron have one of those games when you see, guys like, like Jalen Brunson putting his team on his back when they have 6 guys down with injuries, and it didn't matter because Jalen Brunson was just dropping 40 every night. And it really, frankly, made me start to think, okay, like, I think De'Aaron's that caliber of player, but he keeps getting put in these situations where sometimes superstars just take over games, and it never really felt like De'Aaron had these moments. This is just a long-winded way of saying I think De'Aaron's 60 and pretty much 50-point performance, it really just cemented to me that he is undoubtedly a top 3 Sacramento King of all time. And I just think about, we don't know how much longer you set up top, Brenden, that all those guys are out. We don't know how much longer they'll be out, but it really feels like now you can say, I think the Kings are going to be fine as long as they have De'Aaron Fox on the floor.
Yeah, and I think that, the downside part of it is it was in a loss, which I think everyone in the building was really hoping for. I think Brenden and I kept looking at each other saying, like, they can't waste this. Like, they cannot waste it. But Chris, you and I know from being in the building for Boogie's 56-point game, we know that, we can assure everyone that the Kings can blow it. They've blown a lot of big performances over the years. But it's a reminder, and I think we've seen a lot of those dominant one-man performances, especially going back to the Boogie era, where ex-player is going to score 35, 40 points and put the team on their back and then lose a 4 or 5 point game. I didn't like that it was in a game like that, but that's not anyone's fault. Not De'Aaron Fox's fault. It's everybody else's. We know that game against Minnesota, he got little to nothing from the rest of his teammates, and that's kind of been an issue over the past 4 or 5 games while they've been dealing with this injury bug. But it is a reminder of just the growing just legacy he's building here. And I think he's number 1 in the Sac era and total assists right now. He's going to be up there in points, I think, at the end of the year. You mentioned the Jason Thompson record, which is crazy. JT feels like he played here for a million years, but Fox also was in year 8 of his NBA career, even though he's only 26, about to be 27 years old. So this is a player that, if he signs one more contract here, will have every record and then some probably that we're thinking of here. Maybe outside of rebounding, Sabonis seems like he's going to get a handle on that pretty easily. But I think it just kind of speaks to that other gear the Kings have. We hadn't really seen this team with everyone really firing on all cylinders yet before DeRozan, Sabonis, and Monk got hurt. Fox even was more of a pass first kind of option in that offense, which is fine when you have DeRozan scoring 24 a game and Monk off the bench, even Sabonis averaging 20 a game. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what this team looks like when they get back, because Fox is really just in destroy mode right now, averaging 41.5 points per game over his last 4 games, 57 from the field, 60% from 3. The 3s are starting to fall, 8 assists per game and 2 steals per game. He's really playing like a guy that is essentially on a contract year. And we've been talking about that for a long time, that the Supermax is looming. he says he doesn't really care too much about it. We know that that's just not true. It's just not the case for a Clutch client. He definitely cares, wants that Supermax, and a guy who, for all intents and purposes, he is happy in Sacramento, but at the same time, they need to rack up the wins. Otherwise, we're going to see this process get a little more drawn out or interesting. But 8-7, Fox playing like just a madman. And like Brenden pointed out, reinforcements could be on the way on Friday night.
Yeah, I think I believe him from when it comes to the Supermax thing. I believe that that's not like his primary motive here. Like, I think he always prefaces when he says he doesn't care that he thinks like the accolades will come if we win. And so I think in his mind, it seems to be like that will all fall in line. And he thinks he's good enough to eventually play himself into that. And I think that we've seen that so far. But the big difference stylistically, and I feel like what we've been hearing in post game, and actually he went on a couple of different, he's getting media attention after putting up 109 points in 2 games. Who would have thunk? NBA Today and different things like that. And talked about how he had a conversation with Luke Laux, who he's worked with closely ever since Luke came over with Mike Brown, about we need to get your paint touches back up. And, the big development last year was the steps he took as a 3-point shooter, right? Jumping up to 36.9 from 32 in the year prior, even in the attempts, 5.5 a game, 2 years 2 years ago, 7.8 last year, but there were games where he was settling, I thought. Even at the beginning of this year, he had an 0 of 11 game from 3. I forget exactly who that was against.
Toronto. I think it was on the road in Toronto.
That's right. And it was a tough one, and I remember asking him throughout the course of last year, like, what's your balance between threes and still getting back to the paint and things like that? And he, in typical confident De'Aaron fashion, said, if I'm open from anywhere, I think it's a good shot. And I think that mindset seems to have been developing a little bit throughout the course of this year. And you've heard Mike Brown talk about, like, yes, you can make that shot, but you're also good enough to, even if they are like, don't feel disrespected just because they're giving you that 3, you can still go get to your best shot whenever you want. And that's at the rim. That's some of these little middies every once in a while when they are backpedaling. And I think that we've seen him get to that a little bit more. You mentioned the ridiculous 3-point percentage he's also shooting during this time, which definitely helps. But even percentage of shot attempts, right? Last year, 19% of his shots came within 4 feet. This year, that's back up to 23%, which is closer to what it had been in years prior. So I think that you're seeing his shot profile start to alter back towards what really is his superpower, using that strength and the finishing at the rim, being able to finish on the way up, going down, and different things like that. And it's kind of enabled a lot of his teammates. I think Chris's point of, seeing Jalen Brunson or even SGA on another level take those steps last year. I also started, I thought Fox was on that level, but I also started to question, like, well, okay, when are you going to do it? And I think that we're starting to see that. It's about consistency. We saw him win inaugural Clutch Player of the Year because he was balled out in the 4th quarter, but can you do it the whole game? And can you do that consistently on a night-to-night basis? And I think we're starting to see that more and more, but it needs to continue to be there, because in my mind, the only way the Kings ever eventually become a championship contender, which is absolutely me getting ahead of myself here, is you need to have a guy that can be the best player on the floor. And I kind of think De'Aaron is the only guy that currently has that ceiling on this roster. There's nights where it can be DeMar and certain different guys, but I think that De'Aaron becoming a bona fide superstar is probably the biggest development that could happen to the Sacramento Kings team for their near future and continued development. But you do need a little bit of help. And like we kind of talked about, it looks like DeMar's going to be back soon, Domas and Malik. And I'm curious what changes, because right now De'Aaron's had to do everything kind of. The minutes where he goes to the bench, things go pretty bad. It looks ugly out there, except for Keon Ellis deciding that he's going to hit 33 points with the large majority coming from 3. But how do you feel like, do you guys feel like that this needs to remain this sort of production from De'Aaron as these guys come back? Or is it just inevitable that, it's going to slow down from obviously this insane rate, but how much of this needs to carry over as DeMar, Domas, and Malik return?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? Is hey, like, this is exactly what you needed to do with all these guys down, and no, I don't think anybody is saying that it's any sort of negative, but it becomes a question of, when DeMar comes back, does De'Aaron still kind of say, okay, like I think it would be best if I still kind of have my foot on the gas, and then DeMar, if you can be that Keon Ellis on most night, and as you add more guys, again, maybe everything should kind of continue to center around De'Aaron. I think it's really a fascinating question because frankly, throughout the regular seasons for this team, Domantas Sabonis has been their best player, and it kind of took me until this year to like confidently stamp that down, but I think it's been very clear since the moment Domantas Sabonis has joined this team that at least throughout the regular season they have heavily relied on him for their offense and for consistency, and I think that's going to possibly, like you said, Brenden, be the biggest adjustment. I think it's without a doubt, like you mentioned, in postseason, De'Aaron Fox has to be this team's best player. I mean, we saw that already in that first playoff run that they had a couple years ago. You can't rely, and it's not necessarily too big of a demerit on Sabonis's record, but you can't have Domantas Sabonis be your best player in playoff series. You need that superstar. You need a guy who can give you 40 on a given night if it calls for it, and that's De'Aaron Fox. We've always known that's De'Aaron Fox, and we already saw in that playoff series that that's what he's capable of, but if you can start to see that De'Aaron Fox throughout the regular season, if they can kind of continue to build their offense with De'Aaron being this, full gas, no breaks kind of player. I think that's really interesting. I don't know if it's for the betterment of the team. It does feel like when Sabonis is the hub, when he's that North Star, obviously there's just such even scoring distribution, but I don't know. It really does become a question of, well, what are we really trying to do here? Are we trying to be the most, picture perfect form team where again our offense is flowing, everybody's getting involved, everything's nice, or do we want to frankly operate like how 95% of NBA champions have operated and say, here's our best player, good luck stopping him, and then we have some other supplementary pieces that are going to make it tough for you as well? I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is. I think I know what the answer is, but also at this point in the season, I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but I don't know if you can adjust to something like that on the fly. But I guess that's also leads to the question of, do we feel like in the games that DeMar and Domas played with De'Aaron so far this season, did they have an identity? Was that an identity that you felt like could carry on? Or is this kind of stumbling into, okay, maybe this is what this team's identity is going to be?
Yeah, and I think that just kind of like to that point as well, like, it's been 15 games, and usually I draw a line, and I think Dave and Jason this morning on the morning show were kind of talking about it's a 15-game mark, like what trends of his team have, like what do they need to improve on, what are they bad at, what are they good at, and the Kings are kind of an interesting case because I think we can look at it right now and say that the three-point shooting has been bad, because it has been. When everyone was healthy, they were the worst three-point shooting team in the league. As of today, they're 23rd in the league. Last 4 games, which means you have Fox and Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, who's been struggling from 3. You have Keon Ellis' big game. But the last 4 games, the Kings are shooting 43% from 3, scoring 120 points per game, 51% from the field, 27 assists per game. I mean, the offense has not really been a problem. I mean, they're even with all the guys being hurt, they're finding a way to get it done. Now, De'Aaron Fox is playing at a Super Saiyan level for sure, but I don't really know what this team looks like at full health still, because it was 7-8 games of a fully healthy Kings team. So that's what I'm looking to. Can De'Aaron Fox get to his spot still and find those moments in the game where the Kings really need a basket, and maybe DeRozan doesn't have it, because we've seen the Kings late in games. It feels like more times than not DeRozan's been the guy they've kind of gone to when he's on the floor. And I think that a lot of the offseason talk of, is that going to be a problem? The spacing, 2 clutch players. I think they are still kind of developing that chemistry and developing, whose night is it? Whose shot is it? And I think they're both very team-centered, selfless players. I don't think anyone's going to be trying to get theirs every night. I think it's going to be about winning the game. For sure, like you mentioned, Brenden, I think De'Aaron Fox definitely, contrary to what some people might be saying on social media, which of course is a very toxic place at times, but De'Aaron Fox wants to win. I don't know how anyone can watch the Kings play games and think that De'Aaron Fox does not care and want to win games. So he and DeRozan, both clutch players, they'll figure it out. They'll have to find that balance, but this team is still pretty much in its infancy of as far as what they look like at full tilt, because I mean, come Friday night, and I think that we don't know for sure. There wasn't practice today. We don't have an updated injury report. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get more information on that. But my guess would be probably 2 players come back on Friday. I would guess Sabonis and DeRozan are the likely 2, with Malik maybe right behind them. But you don't know. You never know. But what will they look like? Will the 3-point shooting go back to being regress back to that 29-30% range? Or will players like Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray hit their spots, get their open looks? I know that Keegan is someone as well who we might talk about in a minute, but he's missing. I think he's shooting in the 20s on open looks this year, which is just crazy. So this team has the offensive weapons to be great. De'Aaron Fox has been at all NBA first team level, but it's intriguing that we're here November 20th, 15 games in, and we still don't really know what they look like over a elongated stretch of everybody being healthy.
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see when these guys come back. Like you said, I think the biggest thing for me is De'Aaron remaining aggressive and getting downhill. And I don't mind there being moments. I think it's kind of the nature of having De'Aaron, Malik, and DeMar. Sometimes one of those guys is going to be rolling. And I think that they are all willing to play a little bit of a backseat and recognize quickly, all right, it's DeMar's night right now. Or it's probably even more quarter by quarter, I would say, on who's rolling. There was a game. I'm also forgetting which one this is. It might have been the Toronto game. DeMar scored their entire overtime. There's a different game where De'Aaron and DeMar alternated, and they ended up scoring all of their overtime points. Like I think it doesn't have to be an entire game, but just for segments. All right, you're rolling right now. Let's keep feeding this guy. So I think for De'Aaron, it's just about kind of remaining with that downhill aggressiveness. But I do want to talk about Keegan, like you mentioned a little bit, because I think that, like we just kind of touched on there, that De'Aaron's fit in well with DeMar. But the other big question is, well, is this going to stint the development of Keegan Murray? And I'll just say, I think my answer is no. I don't think that that's what's going on here. I don't think it's the impact or the influence of DeMar on the floor, certainly not off the floor either, that's causing Keegan to have these struggles where he's averaging 12.8 points. But really the concerning thing is that he's under 30% from threes, just under it, 29.9%. And this is a guy that set the rookie record for made threes in a season. That was sort of his, unquestionable elite strength. And obviously, since we've seen him take really big steps as a rebounder this year, I don't think that should go overlooked. He's up to 8 rebounds per game, which is a big jump for him in an area that he was honestly just not that impactful before in his career. Defensively, he's getting the toughest assignment every single night. It doesn't matter what position that we're talking about. He's getting put on Anthony Edwards. He's getting put on, sometimes there's moments of Julius Randle and just a wide variety of different guys. So it's not like Keegan's doing nothing out there, but I think the 3-point shooting needs to be acknowledged because it also was a little bit slow last year, after that 41.1% rookie year. Not bad, but you drop down to 35.8%. And then, like I mentioned, just under 30% throughout the course of this year. Is there any part of you guys that's like maybe that elite 3-point shooting we saw in year one is going to end up being more of the outlier, or what do we make of Keegan slowing down from 3 when that was kind of his bona fide elite skill?
Yeah, I do want to just real quick, just for the people, lay out the injury update that the Kings gave us the other day, just in case people weren't clear on it. Malik Monk was reevaluated the other day. They said he's cleared now for individual on-court workouts. Listed obviously for out against Atlanta the other day. It says the official is re-evaluated in coming days. DeMar DeRozan, similar story, made significant improvement, cleared for individual on-court workouts, listed as out for Atlanta and considered day-to-day. Domantas Sabonis, you mentioned lower back tightness, made significant improvement, cleared for individual on-court workouts, listed as out for Atlanta, considered day-to-day. So just wanted to kind of get that out there in case people hadn't heard that yet or were unfamiliar with exactly where things stand at that. But on the Keegan Murray front, I mean...
Well, and I will say real quick, I think they do practice today. I'm just not sure about media access. So I think today should be a day to kind of get their bearings a little bit on what those guys look like.
Definitely.
And, it wouldn't surprise any of us if, those guys are working out on a day that we don't see.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, anyways, I digress. Hi, how's it going, guys? Let's go Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray, I would definitely have to say that I don't want to I don't want to believe that what we're seeing is a sign of things that maybe you should look at, his more recent track record in terms of the past 2 seasons instead of instead of his rookie season. But then even saying that, I would say look at his college numbers, and they would say that you should probably believe his first season more than these last two. It's really tough. I think overall the conclusion that I think everybody can come to pretty easily is that the Kings are asking Keegan Murray to do, just about everything. Like, there really isn't an area in which they haven't pushed Keegan to be better. And the question, I think, has to become at some point here, the push and pull, the is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it okay? Yes, it's obviously fantastic that you have Keegan Murray, like you said, Brenden, like you laid out perfectly. He's guarding Julius Randle. He's guarding. He'll probably have to guard Shea at some point. He'll have to guard all array of players in this league, which the Kings desperately need. But if that means that his legs are essentially going to be used chasing guys on the defensive end, and he's not going to be able to have his legs on the shooting department, I don't know if that's worth it, because it's impossible, honestly, for me to say that the guy who set the rookie record for most threes in a rookie season all of a sudden is now, and did that while shooting 40%. Like, wasn't just putting them up and got it via volume. Like, he was volume and efficiency. And now you're just seeing a very inefficient shooter. I just have to believe that it has to do something with his legs. It's a bit strange that it's lasted more than a year. You would think the offseason, his first full offseason he didn't play summer league, didn't have to do, obviously his rookie season, he was doing workouts and had to go through that whole ring around and everything like that. This was his first full offseason to Keegan. You can do whatever you want. You can go on vacation. You can stay in Sacramento, do whatever. Just make sure you're ready come October. And the fact that he's still not shooting well, I don't know. It really makes me start to question it. But everything that I know, everything that I've seen through my years of watching basketball just tells me there's no way Keegan Murray forgot how to shoot the basketball. It's just so strange. And you watch him during pregame. It's not like he's not hitting shots. It's not like this is a Mikal Bridges, Chet Holmgren situation where he completely, altered his jump shot or anything. It's just not going in the game. And who knows? It could be, I'm saying legs. It honestly could just be his mental. It could be, same logic to follow, but just, hey, instead of, he's tired, he's physically tired, it could be, well, when he's taking that jumper as of before, he was just thinking, this is my job, hit this shot, cool, make sure you're steady on defense, get back into position on offense to get ready to hit the other shot. Now, as he's taking that jump shot, he's already thinking, well, if I miss this, let me make sure I run back and make sure nobody's running the break, and let me find my guy. There's just more going through his head now than I'm sure there was in his rookie season. And all of these are excuses, frankly. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's a results-oriented business. And Keegan Murray's a three-point shooter and is supposed to be an elite three-point shooter, and he's not shooting like that right now. And at some point, something is going to have to change.
Yeah, I think I'm pulling up right now, and I can't remember if he is still coming into today's action. I don't believe he is. Cade Cunningham passed him up, but we're talking about a player, too, that right behind De'Aaron Fox, who's in second, Keegan Murray has played the third most minutes in the NBA right now. Wow. So talk about a guy who's just a workhorse. But one thing I also want to credit Carmichael Dave and Jason Ross. It's like one of those funny stats, and it probably doesn't really have to do much with as far as like the grand field of analysis and breaking down why he's struggling. But for whatever reason, the worst shooting month of Keegan Murray's career over his 3-year career is November by a wide margin. Looking at here, October. Shoots 36% from three. December, 45% from three. January, 44%. February, 36%. The next 2 months, March, April, 37% each month. November for his career, Keegan Murray is shooting 39% from the field, 27% from three. I don't know.
Seasonal depression? Like, what do we call it?
I guess so, but we're talking about a guy. This is like,
could just take a second to get going.
10% beneath each month outside November. So this is a player who, if you take out November, he's Klay Thompson, Steph Curry style, like very efficient 3-point shooter. November is, I don't want to say single-handedly, but it's the month where he's played the most games in his career. 34 games in his career in November, every other month, 28, 30, 24, whatever down the line. But it could be as far as a notoriously slow starter. I know in a lot of other sports, like in baseball, that's one that I watch a lot. Like a lot of players get dunked on because they have really slow starts. Basketball, I think there's a lot of similarities there too. Some players are just kind of slow starters, and Keegan might be one of those guys that has really horrible numbers to begin with and finishes strong. But I think for sure right now we're looking at a guy who is playing the most basketball he's played in his life from a playing time standpoint. He's in a much new position because you don't have Harrison Barnes behind you anymore to kind of be that power forward. Keegan is the power forward. You know, I know the Kings don't really like label positions too much outside of center and point guard, but Keegan's playing the 4 right now, and he's doing a good job rebounding the basketball. But what comes with that and averaging 8 rebounds per game, which has been useful, you know, you get really physical. You get a little banged up. I think that we heard some whispers that the off days were coming off at a pretty good time because I think he was dealing with, and it hasn't been disclosed and it hasn't been confirmed, but what we heard was a foot or heel issue or maybe just some soreness. Not really something that would require imaging, but he's banged up. This is a guy that's playing a lot of minutes, banged up, trying to find his role in a new offense with one of, you know, the best scorers in recent memory, DeMar DeRozan. That's going to impact things a little bit, but we knew that was going to be something they had to figure out, and I think that they will at some point, and the looks are there. That's the thing that kind of makes me undeterred that I think he's going to be fine. Not because I went on Matt George's podcast and said that he was going to make 253 pointers, which is not looking like it's going to happen.
Nobody listens to that thing anyway.
Yeah, no, listen, no. That's not going to happen. But the shots are there. He has open looks. I do think that they will start falling at some point because he's that good of a shooter. But it is tough to see him right now. He's clearly in his head. He fouls out in 22 minutes the other night. Not making those open looks against Atlanta the other night and fouling out, I think really kind of got to him. The most emotion I've really seen from Keegan Murray from like the negative aspect, untucking his jersey and kind of dropping his hands to his side, hanging his head. Just, I think an article we put out today, had Keegan just kind of hanging his head. He's kind of got like the sad puppy dog look. That's a bummer to see. Don't like to see that from Keegan, who's usually just game face. So, would like to see more smiles from him, obviously, as Kings fans would. And I think the shots will start falling and we might see a little bit more happy Keegan.
Yeah, I think that I posted that clip where he fouled out and untucked the jersey, kind of put his head down. And Mike Brown has said before, the thing he kind of looks for when it comes to Keegan and just where he may be at mentally on the floor is if he puts his head down. You see him do that every once in a while, and he might remain stoic face-wise, but even just looking at the floor, like he's a little bit of a tell sometimes.
Could a body language expert really accurately break down what Keegan Murray is feeling?
Absolutely not, because everybody in my comments was on me about like, that's not showing emotions. I'm like, for Keegan Murray, that is showing emotions, guys.
It definitely is.
That's as much as it gets right there. But I agree with you guys. I mean, I think it's the responsibility that he has right now. He put on weight this offseason, knowing that he was going to play more of the 4. And there definitely are stories in the past of guys putting on weight and that messing with their shot a little bit before, which also could just be an adjustment period. But I think for the most part, he's going to end up locked on from threes again. And I think that will go smooth. It will eventually get back to that point. Deeper in the rotation, though, I think we start to reach some questions as these injuries have been taking place. We've seen more guys get some minutes. Orlando Robinson made his debut for the Sacramento Kings. Trey Lyles has finally kind of returned to form after a really slow start where he missed training camp at preseason with a groin injury. He finally seems to be rolling again. Keon Ellis seems to have got his confidence back. It's really just that one game against Atlanta, but 33 points, a career high. Kevin Huerter still moving kind of slow. Jordan McLaughlin coming into his own. And then you see like Alex Len playing backup center. Sometimes Isaac Jones is playing backup center. We've also seen Mason Jones and Colby Jones, all the Joneses. We might have seen every player on this roster in the last 3 games, actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, except Isaiah Crawford.
Yeah, I think no Crawford, and Colby was the last one, I think, to get in. Yeah. And Matt George and I just immediately made eye contact. Just it's time. And pull a couple rebounds down. So
I'll let you guys pick. Frank, maybe we'll start with you. Who else has stood out to you negatively or positively that you feel like is worth having a conversation about how they've started their season or how they can continue to go from here?
I think just as far as that general bench group goes, and I'm assuming that the rotation will look pretty much normal come this weekend. The importance of Trey Lyles, I think it's just really been, I think that I really was kind of pointing to that as why the Kings are struggling a little early in the year. And I don't want to put that all on one player and say that's the reason why they lost some games, but they really were about five and a half players deep to begin the year because Malik wasn't really fully himself. Even at the time he got hurt, I think his shooting percentages are a little down, and he's at 12 points per game. But Trey Lyles was really just kind of a shell of himself to begin the year. And I think a lot of us were kind of wondering, is it the injury? Is it just because he didn't have any preseason? Maybe all of it, but just really not a great start for Trey Lyles. But the last 6 games, and obviously he's been playing a lot. He 30 minutes per game on average over the past 6 games, which is crazy, and starting a little bit there. 10.8 points per game, 6 rebounds, an assist and a half, but 45% from the field. And the number that matters the most, 44% from 3 on almost 6 attempts per game. That has to happen for a guy who's been a huge part of this team's success for the past 2 years. Their 7th man, really. I think I kind of like to refer to him as he's been their 7th man since the beginning of that 22-23 season. Because without him and Malik Monk off the bench of that second unit, and you can look to Keon Ellis, who's been a positive and showing some flashes that he can score the basketball and shoot. We'll see if that continues to hold true, and I hope that it will for the Kings' sake. But Trey Lyles is someone for a team that has so much a lack of forward depth that really just doesn't have much. Because if Trey Lyles wasn't able to play, I mean, are you playing Orlando Robinson and Isaac Jones 25, 30 minutes? Like it's hard to really know what they would have done if Trey Lyles wasn't available. And he's been playing at a high level. So I'm looking at him. Keon, like you mentioned, just quick thought on him. I think that his ability to shoot has really never been in question. It's really the confidence, because we see him hesitate a couple times. I think that first game in the back-to-back against Minnesota, there was a time where he caught a pass at the elbow 3, and literally looked to his left and there was nobody there. Looked to his right, kind of lost the ball out of his hands for a minute, went to look to shoot again. And at that point, I think one of the T-Wolves defenders closed out on him and he had to pass the ball away. But the quick decision-making hasn't been there to begin his career so much. And I think seeing it kind of come in spots like it did the other night against Atlanta, he looked like he, would never pass up an open look that night. He looked like he wasn't even going to hesitate at all. That's what the Kings need. They need from these guys that are kind of young and inexperienced. And, that's going to happen for a team that is putting a lot of its money into its starting 5 too. Like you're going to have to kind of find those players like Keon Ellis who are undrafted or on cheaper contracts and find that kind of value. Keon's the exact kind of guy the Kings need. He's a 3-and-D type player, but with that 3-and-D, you need to be able to be confident. And I think that's going to be huge for the Kings going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to argue against Trey being the one thing that definitely sticks out, Frank, to me. Like, it is, I don't want to say it's a little bit of our HB theory, but it is, like, more so if Trey Lyles plays well, I think it's going to be really hard on any night for the Kings to lose, especially when they have DeMar and their full complement of cast. If Trey Lyles is giving you double-digit points, or if he's hitting, 3 threes in a game, and you have all of the starters and regular cast kind of producing how they should be, that feels like it's a layer too much for a lot of teams to deal with. It feels like, again, Trey's success really kind of will go hand in hand with this team being successful. I am a little bit starting to wonder if Trey's spot is going to be the one that they look at if they do make a move at some point this season. Obviously, they can go big swing with a guy like, Cam Johnson. They can go with a Bobby Portis or something. Those are more of the names that are out there. And to me, that directly hits into Trey's minutes. And Trey just hasn't played well to start the season. So definitely to me, I agree with you, Frank. That's been the biggest start of season thing that's really stuck out. On a much less impactful note, I will say, I won't say if it's been positive or negative, or we can get into whether it's been negative or positive. But the Doug McDermott and Jordan McLaughlin minutes have just been, maybe not even minutes, but just how Mike Brown has used them throughout the season has been really strange to me. Jordan McLaughlin, didn't play like the first 2 or 3 games of the season at all. We've seen him kind of slowly get integrated here, but even then, you can't really tell when he's going to get that first run. Brenden, I know you track the substitutions all the time. Usually, what is it, about that 6:20 mark, Mike will make that Malik Monk, Keon Ellis sub in for
De'Aaron will come out. Yeah, I think a lot of J-Mac is maintaining the pace that they lose when De'Aaron goes out.
Yeah, and like I've liked what I've seen from Jordan McLaughlin, but at the same time, it's felt like I just haven't really seen enough to know what it looks like at scale. I don't know, way, way too early in the season to even think this kind of stuff. But like, if the Kings were in the playoffs, like, is Jordan McLaughlin in the rotation? Is he out of the rotation? And on that same note, I guess it's not a question for Doug McDermott. Doug McDermott seems to me like he is in this rotation. It feels like more times than not, and funny enough, I'm looking at the stats, Doug has actually played less games than Jordan McLaughlin, which doesn't track in my mind, but feels like Doug McDermott, he's gotten 2 starts already. He's been subbed in first quarters. He got subbed in, I think, in the Kings' first or second home game of the season. He got subbed in to start a fourth quarter, which was super strange. Again, I don't really know if it's been negative or positive with either of these guys. It's just been really confusing to try and figure out when their number is going to get called and what to expect when the number gets called. Because I will say Doug McDermott, obviously only known for being a shooter. What is he shooting this season? 32% from 3. And it really stuck out the other night. It just felt like he couldn't hit anything.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed both of those guys, but specifically McLaughlin. I think the pace that we kind of just talked about a little bit is the big thing that he provides. I think he can play next to De'Aaron Fox as well. I think the 3-point shooting jump that he had in his career last year, the question was, all right, is this real or is that the outlier? Because at that point it was. And so far, only, let's see, total attempts here.
He is 6 of 15 from 3.
Yeah. So small sample, but you'll take the 40% to start. Yeah. So I think that's been encouraging, but I do think that, to your point, Chris, like when these guys are healthy, it's just hard to imagine how he plays on a night to night basis. I think when it comes down to it, he's somebody you really like to have is a break glass in case of emergency guy. And I think that it's, nice to have that sitting there. I think he and Doug McDermott play very well into their offensive style. Doug he's a bigger Kevin Huerter in a way. And there's differences.
That's exactly how they use him.
Same agent.
Plays off. They played out both. Doug has played off Domas before. We've said it, but Kevin talked to Doug when he first got traded to Sacramento about what it's going to be like playing off Domas. So these guys are very similar in that aspect. Like you guys mentioned, Trey and Keon are probably the 2 biggest ones to me because I think they are just the rotational staples that you kind of need when it comes to the depth of this team, even if they are going to be top heavy. But I'm kind of calling the next Keon Ellis here, guys. I think Isaac Jones is somebody to monitor all. I'm not saying like that's going to happen soon. It took time for Keon. All right. And just to say it, I also called this on Robert Woodard. And
that's my thing. You have
for what it's worth.
You have a Stockton prospect that you hype up every year. And to be fair, you were completely spot on about Keon Ellis, though. You nailed it. But Bob, I think we all had high hopes for him. I think we all where in the world was Bob Woodard?
Hopefully playing football somewhere.
But we all had hope. We all had high hopes. He was a full-grown man, and I thought he was 30 years old, but I think he was 20,
23, I think, yeah.
6'8", 250 or something. The guy was a house, but I do think that I see the potential as far as from the forward perspective. The Kings need forwards, and if they're not going to make a move, what other options do you have? But so you liked what you saw from him in limited minutes. I think he's played a handful of minutes here.
25 total minutes.
Yeah, 25 total minutes. What are the per 36? Do we have per 36 here?
He also has 6 fouls.
Let's see here. Why not? Per 36 for Isaac Jones, 14 points. Let's see here. 4.3 rebounds, 8.6 fouls.
Yeah, don't worry.
8.6 fouls. Hey, 1.4.
I think last game, Frank, you and I looked at each other, and I was like, Alex and Isaac have combined for 10 minutes, and they have 5 fouls or something like that. It was ridiculous.
I think one thing we can look back on before we go on is I think we'll look back on I'm assuming that there's gonna be some guys back, DeRozan and Sabonis, but some of the lineups that we saw were
insane.
We're gonna look back on some highlights, and if the Kings win 48 plus games this year and then the playoffs, we're gonna look back on the Huerter, Mason Jones.
I think we're thinking of the same lineup. There was a moment the other game where I was like, okay, who are you expecting to be the offense here?
I don't.
Is it Kevin? Like, I think it was Kevin.
I think it was Kevin Huerter. It was big time 2010 or 2009 vibes where I'm like, wow, this is a bunch of like fringe rotation players that are all playing outside of Kevin Huerter, who's a proven NBA talent. And not to knock on those guys that were in the game. I mean, they have nothing they can do about it. There's no one else that can play. But we're gonna look back on some interesting. The Mason Jones, Kevin Huerter. I think Orlando Robinson. I think Alex Len was in there too. Which, side note, the Alex Len Sabonis starting lineup was wild.
Starting them together was insanity. I will say.
It was once.
Yeah, because then the next Domas didn't play and Alex got the start.
Was it 3 minutes before Mike pulled the plug?
It was something like that. And it was really just, so we asked Mike about it. It ended up being the day after. And his response didn't end up being recorded because it was pregame and just kind of missed out on that. But he essentially said, like, first, you want to just show we had to get Alex run at some point was essentially his logic. And we figured you don't lose the game at the beginning is really what he said. And that you have to sneak in these minutes at some point in the game. So let's do it early. And, take that logic for what you will, but I can kind of follow it a little bit. And as I attempt to justify it, now, obviously, this is not what I would do. I just typically try to understand the other people's logic. For sure. Right. For sure. And so that's what I'm attempting to present here. But from, say, you're Minnesota, like Julius Randle did not go crazy in that game like he did in the first time that they played the Kings, and what felt like damn near every time he played the Kings. Even I think he had a career high, or what was a career high at the time when he was on the Knicks, and he was just hitting step back threes like it was nobody's business.
Cook them forever.
You got to start Domas on Julius Randle, and then therefore put Alex Len on Rudy Gobert, and it was an okay start. Now the offense looked really funky, but they didn't get killed in Alex's minutes or anything. Mike Brown's logic is just, listen, we know we have to play Alex 10 minutes tonight, so where can we fit this in? And I guess we'll call it creative to decide. Maybe it's the beginning of the first and the third quarters.
Yeah. I mean, look. My closing thought is worth a shot. It was worth a shot. I think a lot of people were, I don't want to say clamoring, but I've seen a lot of comments like the Kings should roll the double bigs lineup. I think we see why that won't happen probably again, unless they get a more, floor spacing. And he took a three. To be fair, Alex Len did let a three go in those first couple of minutes. I think it kind of just grazed the rim. But look, he can provide some positives for sure for that second unit. I don't know if that was quite the move, but at the same time, Mike wasn't left with many options there.
Absolutely not. And for there to be a game where we saw literally every center option on the floor, some that I didn't even know were really options, to be honest, but we saw Alex, we saw Orlando Robinson in that game, and then we saw Isaac Jones all get run at that, and we saw Trey Lyles get run at the 5.
Keegan got some too, I think, in one game he got some 5. Yeah. So,
but my quick little thing on Isaac, because I'm just saying somebody to monitor. You can't
just say something like
right?
that and just like
I'm just saying somebody to monitor, right? This guy, by the way, was 5'7" when he was a freshman, and then 6'4" as a senior, and continued to grow from there. But right after high school, he was working at a loading truck company and a storage yard in the Seattle area. And then a friend of his was trying to work out to get on a basketball team. And the coach essentially said, you know anybody 6'7", 6'8" that would want to play? And he knew Isaac. And Isaac ended up joining the team. And point being, this guy's extremely like a raw, just block,
gifted
building block in a way. Yes, like he's doing this, not having really played like that much basketball, organized, high-level basketball throughout the course of his career. And we're already at a point where Mike Brown's like, I don't know, try it. Like they clearly liked what they saw in preseason. Like we even heard a couple whispers about like, oh, keep an eye on Isaac Jones sort of thing at the time of preseason, which also spoke to the lack of depth at the forward position for sure. But I think that this is a guy that I'm just curious to see if he can sort of fine tune some of the details, the fundamentals, and start to get a better just basketball IQ that I think will come over time. Not that he's like slow in some aspect. I think he's just starting a little later there. And now he's also 24. So take that into account when we're talking about all this. But I think it's somebody that, I'm going to keep a close eye on as he performs in Stockton. And, we'll we'll see. But I
We'll
do always
see.
have my little Stockton crush, and I guess
Yeah.
that's the current one.
We'll get out there. Go, Chris.
Would you be okay with like a shades of, especially hearing your story? I did not know that story. Thank you for the information, Brenden. A little shades of Kevon Looney potentially.
I kind of like
I
that.
just think they're kind of built the same. Looney in college, if you look up his UCLA highlights, and especially if you look up his high school highlights, a lot of guard play from Kevon Looney. Like you wouldn't recognize him. Feels like Isaac Jones at this point with where his body is at. Feels like he's more of like a physical presence, a hustle guy, but he doesn't really have that, Montrezl Harrell level hops or anything like that. So I just kind of, with him, it's just going to be tough to try and picture what does his NBA game look like? Like if he's not going to, is he a 4? Can he play? If he can play small ball center, I think that definitely helps out in the long term. But if he's going to be a 4, I think he's probably going to have to learn how to shoot a lot better and kind of figure out mobility wise how to stay on, some perimeter guys.
6'8", 245, and Kevon Looney is 6'9", 222. So they're close. They're close. He actually has a little more size on him than Kevon
Gosh,
Looney.
he's got 20 pounds on Kevon Looney.
Got 20 pounds on Kevon Looney, and they're about the same height. And
But Looney, is that with the cinder blocks and his shoes?
That's crazy.
I don't know if it accounts for the cinder blocks, but they're definitely there.
Okay. While we're just throwing out random things too, something I noticed here on Basketball Reference, just thought it was worth mentioning. Doug McDermott on the season, 11 of 34 from 3. He's 3 of 7 from 2. Just thought it was interesting. In 7 2-point attempts.
You should see it. Like this is what he does. Last year,
crazy.
Right? Let me try to pull this up. Last year, the entire season, he ends up with 94 of 229 from 3.
Okay.
29 of 55 from 2.
Wow.
55 twos the whole season.
Wow. What was that player in college? I can't remember his name. That just wasn't that guy in the tournament.
Oh, the dude. I thought you were talking about the dude who scored like 100 points at some D3 school.
I think that is what I'm talking about. Who had he only took threes. He only took threes. I think I
can't remember what his name
was.
They
had a shot chart. His shot chart was like, you have all the traffic from shots on the outside the 3-point line, and then there's like one from the free throw line. It's because like he had to. Because the buzzer was going to go off.
You're talking about the dude from last year, yes.
Yes. I can't remember his name, though.
Oh,
I don't think he's in the league.
I want to say a name, but I don't want to. I think he was on OKC's Summer League squad. I want to say a name, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Is it the guy? What's it? Not Ginkel?
Okay, so then thank you. Jack Golke.
Jack Golke. Is it him?
Oakland.
Yes. I think it is him.
University.
I think he only took threes.
Yes.
See, they say it's the Steph Curry effect, but it's really the Doug McDermott effect. He changed the game, guys.
That's right. 100%.
While it looks like we're coming down to it anyway. Closing thought on Keegan too. Just I have his shooting numbers up before I forget. Keegan Murray this season at the rim, 91%, 21 and 23, 3 to 10 feet from the basket. He's shooting 42% on 33 attempts. Even mid range, 10 to 16, 42%. That's okay. The mid range, the mid to the 3-point line. 16 to the 3-point line, 5 of 10, 50%. It's just threes, man. And that's the bulk of his field goal attempts. He has 87% of his attempts from 3-point land, and he's shooting 29%. So, I mean, we're really talking about a couple threes here and there. Things look a lot better for him. But just wanted to put that out there while I still have it that I'm not too concerned. He is 13 of 14 on dunks. I can't remember what dunk he missed, but he missed one. So,
wow.
Don't know.
I'm kind of shocked that he has 14 dunk attempts already.
Also, whatever Basketball Reference categorizes as a hook shot, he's 0-1 on hook shots.
Need to up those.
I can't recall a Keegan Murray hook shot. I'd love to see one, but
yeah, his dad's out here tweeting, get him in the post more. Mike Brown said after the game that they tried to get him in the post a little bit. I think that's a clear sign of like, we're trying to get this guy's confidence back. And so I think that'll eventually come around. But right now, Kings are sitting at the 10th seed. 8-7 in the Western Conference, and it's a tight race like we all expected. 1 game behind the 5th seed, 2 games. I mean, you're 3 games out of first place. Obviously, still really early in the year, but there's a 1 game separating the 5th seed down to the 11th seed currently in the Western Conference. I think this is going to end up being a theme throughout most of the year, like it has been for the last couple. 6th in offensive rating for the Kings, and currently 15th in defensive rating, but it would be curious to see how De'Aaron Fox, or if he's able to maintain some sort of this improved production as DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, Malik Monk eventually come back with their next game being on the road Friday against the Clippers. Frank, you kind of said some final things there. Chris, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it's good to be back on the pod, and it's good to see De'Aaron Fox playing like a super duper star. And hopefully we can get some guys back here soon, because I miss watching DeMar DeRozan play basketball.
Same.
Yeah, hard to not feel the same. Definitely, there's moments every once in a while where I'm like, yep, this is DeMar DeRozan just doing whatever he wants out here. Crazy. I will say I'm curious to see that they've taken a lot more threes since those guys gone out, which obviously makes sense. But, how's that shot profile going to continue to adjust here? But everybody give it a little bit of time, guys. This is an over dramatic example, but the Heat didn't win the championship the first year they got brought. They took a sec to get everybody else around them. I'm not saying they are not the Heat, guys. They are not the Heat.
Yeah,
do not get me wrong. I'm just saying,
Isaac Jones needs to take his next leap, and then the Kings can become the Heat.
No, but I think even long term, you don't know what complementary pieces you need around these guys until you see them play together. I think this was always going to be a little bit of a process. You know what I mean? So we're early. Calm down. Get out of my timeline with the fire Mike Brown stuff. There's absolutely ridiculous. Relax.
Get Brown out of town.
Yep.
He just signed an extension. I don't know how to break it to people gently, but he just signed an extension. He's not going anywhere. So
Kings are only 3 games back of first place, man.
It's been 15 games, guys.
The new Heatles. The new Heatles. You heard it here first.
Yeah. There you go. Isaac Jones, next superstar, and Kings. Heatles.
Next Chris Bosh. Some could say the next Chris Bosh.
Some could. Also a Seattle guy, and I think, has some feelings for the Supersonics for what it's worth.
He's from the area. I don't
let's he should.
Let's not get the Spencer Hawes stuff going.
Man before he even steps out.
Yeah, Brendan's got to throw that jab out there before.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. I'll keep my mouth shut. Anyways,
Brendan, sorry. Is there any Stockton action coming up soon? I know
the Stockton Kings play tonight. Actually, I am still unsure if I'm going to go out there.
Okay.
But yeah, we will see. Yeah,
rainy, cold night. I might throw on at home.
Yeah, fair enough. That's where we're at. But yeah, Stockton has started their season a little bit. I actually don't have it pulled up in front of me, but been doing all right. New head coach down there. Some Isaiah getting a lot of run, and Terry Taylor's on that roster down there, and a couple other guys. Boogie Ellis. Some other Sharif actually did not end up making it. He was on the training camp roster, and then he didn't make the final cut.
Are they gonna? That's done? That's over.
Right? Like his career?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's like 25 or 20. He's gonna be older now, right? I mean,
yeah, he's probably 26, 27 at this point. He's played with the G League Ignite for like 2 or 3 years now.
Well, I'll tell you what. If he was born 12 years earlier, 13 years earlier, he might be playing. Playing for whatever team Shaq was on.
Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I think he'd be on a team.
Yeah.
This is kind of the way things are going right now.
I think.
Yeah. We might see more of us down the line, by the way. I think this opened up a whole nother can of worms.
Rain Fox, can't wait.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
30. Yeah, 30. How old would Fox be? Rain's like, what, 2 now? So Fox will be.
Can't say.
Nah, I think Fox will be gone, but I don't know.
That attitude.
42-year-old Fox. It could happen. Vince Carter. It could happen.
Never know. Other names, real quick, just because I pulled it up. Drew Timme on that team. Fan favorite, for sure.
Carmichael Dave.
Isaiah Crawford. Scalabissier down there also still.
He had a big game in their
pretty
season
well last year. Yeah, definitely did. Yeah. So something to keep tabs on. And the Kings are going to continue their season here. Very early, guys. I think we're less than 20% of the way. I want to say it's like 18% of the way through the course of this season. Early, give it time. I still think a lot of things are developing. We haven't seen anywhere near what the final form of even this offense looks like. There's adjustments to adding DeMar and some of these new pieces that are still a work in progress. And losing Jordi Fernandez, I think, is a little bit of an adjustment for this team as well. He was the one in charge of rotations and things like that. So certain adjustments going on.
Saturday?
Sunday.
That'll be
Kings Net Sunday. They have a back-to-back, a very nice back-to-back from the NBA. They get to play Brooklyn on Sunday at home, and they get to play Oklahoma City at home The next day,
Brooklyn Nets you've watched, but that is not an easy game. Let me
No,
tell you,
I'm saying no.
Playing.
I was being sarcastic. I was saying that Cam Thomas Sunday, and then you have to play OKC on a back-to-back on Monday. But hey, the new court and the throwback jerseys in the throwback court on Sunday. That'll be nice to see.
Dude, RFP Royale, by the way. Short-lived.
Yeah.
Bad vibes, man. I didn't want to see him.
I just am going to love 5 years down the line. He's going to be remember Royale?
Yeah.
I feel like the Kings are going to make it a bit like it'll be Slamson's birthday, which they have Slamson's birthday every year, and they bring out all of their mascots. I feel like Royale is going to come out like in a disguise or something.
That's a great call, actually.
Benny the Bull is going to hit him with a chair
we're
or
here,
something.
Why not? Do y'all think that like Royale, like this is like they had to have made the costume already?
Oh,
right?
for sure.
He was there.
in the team.
Like this is like a sunk cost.
Yeah.
I don't want to air out too many details.
Fair.
But I'll just say,
look, if you're listening an hour in, I think you deserve some sort of.
It's true.
I'll say that there was a pivot after the buzz or backlash, whatever you want to call it. They pivoted quickly, and
the Fox quote.
There was a cost. They're a multi-million-dollar organization. I'm sure they can afford the cost of a costume. I'm sure it's fine. But the Fox quote, the social media, Bleacher Report making that big old lettered WTF is that that just completely said, you know what, let's just not do it, and they made a skit instead. So.
Yeah, I can't believe Sean told the Ear to say that. That's crazy that he did that. Yeah.
Sean Cunningham killed Royale. So
he did.
Yep.
Sean Cunningham is responsible.
Can't confirm.
But to end it, it's like a Marvel movie. I think like it would say Royale will return. Like it literally the final line
after the credits.
Video, it should have been Royale will return. It's like when? Like the Sacramento Kings cinematic universe, man.
It's I think
Slamson's birthday is a great shout out.
That is.
Keep an eye out for it.
Royale's laying on the floor like deceased, and you just see his hand twitch, and then it goes to credits.
Yeah,
and then eye just opens, and then cut to black.
Linkin Park starts playing. No, I do think, and someone else had the idea that like a Royal Rumble, like he's just gonna come, like a number's gonna come up.
Rumble.
Yeah, a Royal Rumble. Royale Rumble. He might just come out with like smokes, like the smoke machines and the song and everything. But as of right now, he's in a box going back to Cincinnati. So
I was fascinated to see was Slamson and Royale going to be in the same room? Like from a logistics standpoint, or are they just not that Slamson isn't just the Lion, but was Slamson going to play Royale, if you catch my drift?
Another great question, because I don't know, I can't remember the name of the man who, I know that the person who has played Slamson for a long time is like an athlete, like he is crazy. He rollerblading downstairs, like he can do everything. Stilts. I don't know if Royale would have just been some sales rep, like our buddies Alex or Jasper from the Kings sales team. Just throw him out there; he'll be fine. I don't know.
We're like, where did Frankie go?
Yeah. Why is Royale so
It's
short?
like Clark Kent and Superman. It's just like, oh, wait, what? He put on the glasses, and all of a sudden, it's like Frankie had to go to the bathroom, and he's been gone for 3 hours.
Just 1 minute you look, and I'm gone. My chocolate chip cookie's still sitting there. He would never leave his cookie. It's going to be fun to see if they do anything with it. If they're smart, I will say, as much of a maybe like a quote-unquote fail it might have been, or how they view it, they can have fun with it, and I think get their... whatever they put in the costume, they can get their money out of it if they play this the right way. I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
Give us a call. Give us a call, Kings. We can help you.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankie's ready to suit up any minute, clearly. I'm ready to support it. I'll post everything about it. Absolutely. And I think that's what we got, fellas.
Yep. Yeah,
so
sounds good.
Appreciate everybody that tuned in. Very glad to have Chris Watkins back on here. The return of the Christopher. I thought we had a punnier name, and I totally just dropped it as I was talking there.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Appreciate everybody listening. Definitely be sure to leave a like and subscription if you're watching on the video side, or if you're on the audio side, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with future episodes, and check out sacktownsports.com for all of our written work as well, and the various shows that we got going from 6 to 6. Appreciate everybody listening, and you'll hear from us again in the next couple of days.